Today is Thursday, July 18th. We're talking about a new chant at a Trump rally and what to know about an impeachment vote. Plus, the weather coming to half the country, what you need to know about that FaceApp challenge, and The Lion King hits theaters. Then hang out after the news for Think to Know Thursday's bonus interview about going to the moon and eventually Mars. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Send her back. That was the crowd's chant at President Trump's rally in North Carolina last night. It echoes Trump's tweet last weekend when he essentially told 4 congresswomen of color to go back to the countries they came from, though all are U.S. citizens. In fact, it was those initial tweets that also put the issue of impeachment to a House vote for the very first time. But starting the impeachment process is a no-go, at least for now. The House voted yesterday to table the measure, aka put it on hold. Though the House did vote to condemn Trump's tweets earlier this week, calling them racist, the majority of Democrats, along with Republicans, were not on board with impeachment. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said it's too divisive for the country right now, and she wants the House committees investigating Trump to do that job first. Of course, President Trump is also not a fan of this idea either. He called it the most ridiculous project, and he says after that vote, impeachment efforts should now be over. A different House measure did pass yesterday, holding Attorney General William Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in criminal contempt of Congress. So what does that mean? Well, technically, it means they could be fined or even sent to jail, but that's highly unlikely. A U.S. attorney would need to be involved, and U.S. attorneys report to the Justice Department, which is run by Attorney General William Barr, the same guy who was just held in contempt. So bottom line, this was mostly a symbolic move. Still, the vote is tied to that citizenship question President Trump wanted to add to the 2020 census. Democrats are skeptical about why the president wants that question on there, so they subpoenaed both Barr and Ross for documents to try and find out. Both men refused to hand those docs over, and that's why those men are being held in contempt. CBS News quotes a White House spokeswoman who says it's just another political attempt to harass the president and his administration. The Mexican drug lord known as El Chapo will spend the rest of his life in prison. The Wall Street Journal reports Joaquin Guzman was sentenced to life behind bars for running a drug empire, likely the largest in the world. He sent massive amounts of cocaine into the U.S. over the last 2 decades and ordered the murders of his enemies. And on top of his sentence, he's supposed to hand over more than $12 billion he's made from dealing drugs. Since his arrest 2.5 years ago, Guzman has been locked in solitary confinement in the U.S. When he spoke in court yesterday, he did not apologize for his crimes. Instead, he used his time to talk about the confinement, saying it was torture and inhumane. But the reason he's in there is because he's broken out of a Mexican prison twice before. He'll likely serve his life sentence in a supermax prison in the U.S. Guzman's attorney says they will be appealing. For the first time in 20 years, the number of drug overdose deaths in the U.S. went down. New preliminary government data shows deadly overdoses were down about 5% last year compared to 2017. The New York Times reports the data suggests the drop in deaths may be related to prescription painkillers because doctors are prescribing fewer opioids than they used to. More drug users also have access to treatment and medication that can reverse an overdose. Experts call the new stats encouraging, but they do say it's not time to celebrate too much. The death toll is still high. A major heat wave could bring the hottest temperatures of the summer for parts of the U.S. The National Weather Service issued excessive heat watches, warnings, and heat advisories for the Plains, Midwest, and parts of the East starting today through the weekend. Temperatures will be in the 90s, and more than half of the U.S. will reach 100 degrees or hotter. Expected to cool down a bit, though, by next week. If you or a friend are getting married, then you need to know about this week's sponsor, Zola. Zola makes wedding planning so easy and convenient. It starts with a free wedding website and a suite of helpful wedding planning tools and ends with the chance to get 20% off any of the gifts left on your registry after your big day. With Zola, you get to create your dream registry, personalized with exactly what you want. You can create funds for your future home, a new puppy, an experience on your honeymoon, you name it. I actually wish I knew about Zola when I got married, but I have used it as a wedding guest. In fact, I had the chance to buy a friend a gift card and a champagne toast. It felt so personal and fun. And I got some other friends getting married their dream coffee machine. We even contributed to my cousin's Airbnb stay during his honeymoon. All of it was through Zola. So start your free wedding website and get $50 off your Zola registry. Just go to zola.com/newsworthy. Again, go to Zola, Z-O-L-A, zola.com/newsworthy to get started. Now back to the news. Perhaps you've seen people posting photos of themselves looking older or younger in what some call the FaceApp challenge. Well, they're using an app called FaceApp to create the fake photos. But with renewed popularity comes some more privacy concerns. CNET says experts are worried the Russia-based app is holding on to users' photos after they're uploaded or getting other data off users' devices. FaceApp says not true, that most pictures are deleted from their services within 2 days. USA Today says there's no specific evidence right now that FaceApp has done anything wrong, but experts warn to be cautious when letting apps like that gain access to your personal info. Instagram is giving more people the option to hide how many likes their posts get. The Verge says Instagram is expanding its test now for this new feature, hiding like counts for some users in 6 more countries, including Ireland, Italy, and Japan. We actually told you about this initial test a few months ago. The feature makes it so you can only see how many likes your own posts get, and you can't see anyone else's numbers. It's meant to get users to focus more on the photos and not so much on their popularity, and boost users' self-esteem. TechCrunch says the company is not really saying how the tests are going so far, but it's at least going well enough that Instagram is continuing with this test. No word yet on whether or not this will be coming to the US. Once again, Amazon Prime Day broke the company's sales records. Amazon did not reveal total sales amounts this year, but CNET says Prime members bought more than 175 million items during the 2-day sale, which beat out the previous record set last year. And Amazon says Prime Day 2019 was bigger than both Black Friday and Cyber Monday combined, making it the largest shopping event in Amazon history. The company also says a record number of U.S. Prime members shopped on the site. There are now 100 million members worldwide. Amazon's founder, Jeff Bezos, is still the richest man in the world, but it seems the second spot is no longer Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft. A European billionaire, Bernard Arnault, took that number 2 spot. Arnault is the founder of LVMH, which is behind luxury brands like Dior and Louis Vuitton, and the company is apparently seeing record growth. Bloomberg says Bill Gates is now the 3rd richest man, but he's never ranked lower than number 2 in the 7-year history of the Bloomberg Billionaires Index until now. Arnault is worth $108 billion. Disney's highly anticipated remake of The Lion King will hit theaters tonight, and it's expected to be a huge hit. The live-action remake features a star-studded cast, including Beyoncé as the voice of Nala and Donald Glover as Simba. Variety says the movie is expected to make between $150 to $175 million this weekend alone. The LA Times reports there's a lot of pressure for The Lion King to do well since the original movie was so huge. The movie hits theaters tonight, so stay tuned. All right, that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Thing to Know Thursday, where a different expert explains a different thing to know only on Thursdays after the news. Today, we're talking about the Future Moon Mission, a call to send astronauts back to the moon by 2024. It's a sort of part 2 from last week in honor of the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, when humans walked on the moon for the first time. Well, today, we're looking forward. Is the new moon mission realistic? What's different from this one compared to 50 years ago? And how does it affect plans to go to Mars next? My guest today is Emma Lehnhardt. Hart. She is the Program Planning and Control Manager for NASA's Gateway program, which is a key part of the new moon mission. So here's my conversation with Emma Lehnhardt. Emma, welcome to the Newsworthy. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So earlier this year, Vice President Mike Pence announced the goal of putting Americans on the moon again by 2024. So first, is this realistic? Do you expect it to actually happen?
We are absolutely taking this challenge as presented by the Vice President and the rest of the administration. My job at NASA is within the Gateway program, which is going to be a small space station or spacecraft in orbit around the moon. And that spaceship is going to be absolutely essential for landing astronauts again on the surface of the moon.
So some people may hear about this mission and wonder, wait, haven't we been to the moon before? Why does it take so long to go back?
It's a challenge again, and it certainly doesn't feel like that long for us, to be honest with you. Only 4 or 5 years away is very challenging to get these new systems acquired, built, tested, and ready to go for this end-to-end mission. And I would say to those folks who wonder about this, we haven't gone to the moon in this way with partnerships, with commercial partners as well as international partners. And we also haven't gone to the places on the moon that we are talking about now. The vice president, in fact, particularly called out the south pole of the moon, which is of interest for a variety of reasons, scientific reasons, such as there's water ice in abundance at the south pole of the moon. This makes it a very interesting place to explore. And when you look back 50 years at the Apollo missions, all of those landing sites were around the equatorial or the middle part of the moon. And there's so much that we haven't explored yet.
And what's the overall purpose of this next moon mission? There's a lot of talk about how it's the next step to the bigger goal of sending people to Mars.
It absolutely is true. The International Space Station right now is, even though it's in space, relatively close to the Earth, and it's not easy to come home should something go wrong, but easier than to come home from the moon and definitely from Mars. So extending human exploration into the space around the moon, which we call cislunar space, and onto the surface of the moon is really all about learning how to live and work in a deep space environment. And we need to do that and figure out the new technologies, figure out how to take care of our astronauts in this deep space environment before we go all the way to Mars.
And when do you expect the Mars mission to actually happen? Is there any sort of timeline at this point?
We call it our horizon goal, and it is always in our mind in the planning and the technology development that we do. We have said that the target for Mars exploration with humans would be in the decade of the 2030s.
There seems to be a sort of international race again to go to the moon. We're hearing from India and China, for example, who are working on moon missions. How is that impacting what's happening at NASA?
I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as a race. I think that there is a lot of genuine interest in the moon, not only from countries around the world, but also from companies in the United States and abroad. And I think we're in more of an era of cooperation, or maybe even perhaps co-opetition, which is cooperation and competition at the same time, than a race with any other specific party.
So say we get to the moon by 2024, all is going successfully. What happens next?
The next phase is all about what we call a sustainable presence. So instead of landing on the moon, having your footprints in the lunar soil, and setting up a flag, and then just coming home, what we need to do is have that sustainable presence of humans in orbit around the moon and on the surface of the moon. So that is going to take a buildup of capabilities, larger habitable volume on the gateway, for example, and surface facilities on the lunar surface for people to be able to live and work there for a longer period of time.
And does this have anything to do with the private company's missions to take average people on commercial space tourism flights?
It could. It absolutely could in the future. For the gateway, for example, we are designing that to accommodate any what we call visiting vehicle. So any spacecraft, either with cargo resupply or with humans aboard, using something called interoperability standards. So standards for connecting one spacecraft to another that have been agreed to by the international community.
It's kind of like the version of a hotel in space.
Yes, absolutely. Or it could be.
Right, in the future.
Yep.
Anything I haven't mentioned about the future moon mission that you want to mention?
Yes, I think that as a young woman at NASA who was not alive to see the first people walk on the surface of the moon, I personally am tremendously excited about the Gateway program, about the overarching Artemis mission. And one thing in particular I would like to point out is that we call it Artemis because Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo and the goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. And this first 2024 mission is really all about sending the first woman and the next man to the surface of the moon. And that's very exciting.
And you can read more about our guest and NASA's plan in today's show notes. Go to thenewsworthy.com, click episodes, and look for today's date. That's where you'll find all the sources and links to all the stories we talked about in this episode. Thank you so much for listening today. The Newsworthy is here for you by 4 in the morning every weekday, so we'll chat again tomorrow. Have a great day.